Are you thinking about moving to Wasaga Beach, Collingwood, Blue Mountain, or Tiny, but you're concerned about Airbnbs because we're a very tourist-based destination? Or are you thinking about buying an Airbnb as an investment in those same areas? Stick around. I'm going to go through the restrictions, where you can Airbnb, where you got to stay away from Airbnb, and give you a little bit of a deeper dive across all our communities of Wasaga Beach, Collingwood, Tiny, and Blue Mountain. Hey, remember, if this is your first time on the channel, make sure you subscribe and tap the bell for notifications. That way you'll just be the first to know everything that is happening in Wasaga Beach, Collingwood, and the general area. Hey, my name's Kevin De Silva, and I'm a local real estate agent here in Wasaga Beach, Collingwood, and the general area. And I get calls all the time about people looking to move here. So if that sounds like you, reach out to me. It doesn't matter if it's next month, next year, or you just want to learn more about the area. All my contact details are in the description box of this video, including a Zoom link where you can book a call with me directly on my calendar at a time that works for you. We can go over anything you want to, Airbnb related or not. We can do a Zoom call and get to know each other a little bit. Other than that, let's get back onto the video and talk about short-term rentals, Airbnbs, and give you a good understanding about that across our community. Now let's dive into my computer. All right, so we are gonna start over in Wasaga Beach. So Wasaga Beach is a little bit tricky for Airbnb. If you go on Airbnb, just like the app, or if you go online, you will see that there's a lot of Airbnbs available in the town for all different price points. Now, here is something people don't know. Airbnbs are pretty much illegal in most of the town. That's right, they're illegal in most of the town. I'm gonna show you this, okay? So if you go on the town's website and if you go into the zoning section and you review the zoning requirements for an Airbnb, and actually, let me introduce a new term to you, STR. STR stands for short-term rental, okay? And that way it covers Airbnb, VRBO, or really just any short-term rentals. If you look across any town platforms or city platforms looking for Airbnb bylaws, you should actually type in short-term rental bylaws in this town. So I have right here the short-term rental bylaw document for Wasaga Beach open here, and I'm going to circle it right here. Okay. The zoning required for a short-term rental in Wasaga Beach, it's only allowed in DC1, DC2, DG1, DG2, B1, and B2. Now, the thing is, most of Wasaga Beach short-term rentals are in R1 areas, R1 being your typical residential zoning. I'm going to pull that up on a map for you to see what I mean by that. Okay, so I have the map pulled up right here. This is the famous Beach Drive right here. Whoops, sorry about that, zooming in. Okay, so here we got the famous Beach Drive. I don't know if you could see it on Beach Drive. There we go. So you got Beach Drive, that's the famous Wasaga Beach 1 area, the strip area. And you can see all the zoning around there, B1, 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 B2, and then across the bridge, you got DC1, DC2, all that stuff. That's where all the short-term rentals are allowed, in those areas. But if you go on an Airbnb map, you'll see them all over the place. Look, I'll zoom into this area. Let's say, this whole area right here, let's say Oxbow and this Shore Lane, and let's zoom into some of these 32nd, 33rd, 34th. If I go to a zoning map, and if I go to that same area, all you see is mostly R1, R1, R1. Our Airbnbs and short-term rentals are not allowed in R1 zone, yet they're pretty much all in R1 zones. Honestly, it feels like it's a little bit complaint-driven right now. If one of your neighbors are complaining in Wasaga Beach that there's a short-term rental nearby, bylaw should be coming by and issuing some fines and stuff like that, because technically they're almost not allowed almost anywhere in Wasaga Beach. Now, that's a big controversy. A lot of people are against it. Some people are for it. I'm impartial. I think we should have a licensing system to allow some Airbnb in a proper format. I'll explain how Tiny and Blue Mountain does that especially, and even Collingwood. And I would love to see Wasaga Beach implement some of their rules to allow some of it, but in a structured and policed way so it doesn't get out of hand. I'll explain that as I go through the other towns. But yeah, Wasaga Beach, it's not allowed right now. There are some talks for some interim bylaws to allow some of it, some sort of licensing system. It's not yet fully functional. They've been talking about it for over a year. I'm really hoping something comes out because we don't have Airbnb, many Airbnbs. I have clients that actually do want to rent Airbnbs. So if we have a proper system and a proper structure for it, that would be great. The zones that it does allow Airbnb, I know the common answer might be, oh, let's just go tell your clients to go rent an Airbnb in those zones. A lot of those zones are near the main beach where it's just louder and more busy. Some people want like some quieter areas to enjoy the beach. So I do think there's a place for it, but it has to be structured, in my opinion. So some people think there's a little bit of a loophole in Wasaga Beach for short-term rentals because they do allow, in those R1 zones that I'm telling you about, they do allow for bed and breakfast, B&Bs. The STR and B&B, all these acronyms, it's a little confusing, but the bed and breakfast, I'm going to highlight this right here. This is one of the main things that separates it. And people want to rent an Airbnb or a short-term rental. They want to rent the entire space most of the time. They want to rent a house for them and their kids, and they want to hang out. A bed and breakfast defined as a private residential dwelling unit permitted only in zones indicated in the Town of Wasaga Beach zoning bylaw in which the owner or a long-term leasee resides, and within which guest rooms that may have separate sanitary facilities but shall not have separate culinary facilities are offered to the traveling public, and meals may or may not be offered to the guests. Okay, let me break that down a little bit. So basically, you can run a B&B if you live in it or you lease it on a long-term basis, but the separate rooms cannot have their own kitchen facilities like a hotel would. So you have to share the kitchen facilities, but they can have bathrooms. That's kind of some of the main criteria for B&B, whereas when we're traditionally thinking of, well, I want to rent an Airbnb, they're looking to rent a cottage, their own cottage, without the owner or the leasee living there, okay? So even though some people think it's a loophole, it ain't really, all right? So you got to be careful with that. Hopefully we have some structure that comes into that in the future from Airbnbs in Wasaga Beach. Moving on to Collingwood. Okay, so short-term accommodations in Collingwood. Let's shift over to STRs. So if I say STR, or if I say Airbnb, I'm kind of talking about the same thing. Just I'd rather use STR, but so many people are familiar with the term Airbnb, associating that with short-term rentals anyways. So just bear with me on that. So in Collingwood, as of January 6th, 2025 of this year, there is a new short-term accommodation licensing bylaw in effect. All right, so to operate a short-term accommodation in the town of Collingwood, you must first apply and obtain a license. So you do need a license from the town of Collingwood. Now, within those licenses, there are some restrictions, and I'm going to go through a few of those high level. So right now, there are 3 classes of short-term rental accommodation licensing in Collingwood. There's a guest room, principal residence, and an additional residential dwelling unit. Okay, so I'm going to open up a guest room. So it must be located in a single family dwelling, single detached dwelling. The single detached dwelling must be the licensee's principal residence. That's the key thing. They have to live there. It has to be their principal residence. Class B would be the entire house. So must be, again, single detached dwelling. The single detached dwelling must be the licensee's principal residence. Again, the licensee may be the property owner or a long-term tenant. Okay. The maximum occupancy is limited to 2 persons per approved guest room. So it depends how many rooms you got. 2 people per room. Okay. 3-bedroom house, 6 people. There are licensing fees associated with getting an STR license in the town of Collingwood. Class C, additional residential dwelling unit STA license, must be located in an attached or detached additional residential unit on the same lot as the single detached dwelling. So this would be like something like a backyard unit or something like that. Like an approved one. I'm not talking about just some unapproved shit. Okay. So the single detached dwelling must be the licensee's principal residence. Again, same as the other 2 class licenses. Same rules, 2 persons per approved guest room, which honestly in one of those type detached dwellings, attached or detached additional residential unit. So if it's one of those tiny homes in the backyard, I don't know, you could probably only get 1 room in there. So it would probably only be for 2 people. The licensee may be on site in the single detached dwelling unit during the rental period. Fair enough. Okay, so basically, and then there's a full application process that you can go through. This is just on the town. If you go on Google and just Google Collingwood short-term rental accommodation licensing, you will see this page. Or just reach out to me and I can send you the link if you can't find it. But then the application process is here. All the zoning bylaw requirements. There are a bunch of requirements. It's not just apply and you get it. There's some fire safety stuff, some property standards checklists. I'm not going to go through all of it in this video, but they are all there. You can book a call with me. In the description box of this video is all the contact information. There is a Calendly link where you can book a Zoom call directly with me on my calendar or a time that works for you. We can go through all this stuff in more detail and then we can kind of go from there. Okay, so fines for Collingwood Airbnbs, you're not going to like this. On a first offense, a fine of not more than $50,000. There's one definition I see. A second offense of not more than $100,000. Now, that seems excessive, but that's what it shows here on their bylaw. And you better be careful. You don't want to get those fines. They are in full effect as of January 6th, 2025. That's wild. Okay. Moving on. Again, there's eligibility, applications, required documents, online application, the review, the inspections, the approval. It's a 6-step process. Within these 6 steps, there's more steps. Okay. Section 6 of the Collingwood short-term rental bylaw states number of licenses. So after this comes into effect, there's only going to be 200 licenses allowed in the town of Collingwood to run short-term rentals. As at the time of making this video, there are definitely not 200. This is a map, an interactive map available to the public. You could see this. I could send you the link for this. This will show all the approved short-term rental licenses in Collingwood, and the yellow ones are the one under review. You can see, even including the ones under review, there are not 200. So there is room for more if that's something you are thinking of, and you can keep that in mind. And there's some flexibility. I do like this concept because there's 3 different classes, 3 different options. At least it gives some sort of flexibility. So I do like the Collingwood structure of the Airbnb. Now we are going to move on to Blue Mountain. Okay, so in the town of Blue Mountain, very, very popular for Airbnbs because of the Blue Mountain ski hill, right? So a lot of people come here for skiing in the winter, and honestly, a lot of people come here to visit in the summer because there's a lot of beautiful trails and a lot of places to hang out and beaches, and there's just a ton to do. So Airbnbs and short-term rentals, super, super popular in Blue Mountain. But again, there are restrictions, okay? So if you're an investor, be careful with the restrictions. If you're a purchaser and you want to live there, be mindful of these restrictions in case there's some non-conforming uses near you, okay? So on this page, there's like the whole pre-screening guide, application process, again, fire safety, review, and inspections. A lot of these licensees and structure is really built around some standards, really. And honestly, I agree with it. I don't think it should be a free-for-all and you can kind of do whatever you want in the Airbnb world. I do like having some structure to it to keep it just somewhat in check, right? So it doesn't get out of hand. And again, safety standards for people renting what's supposed to be alternative to a hotel room. So I do like some of these things. Now, the main thing you got to watch out for in the town of Blue Mountain for Airbnbs is where you could do them. Again, just like Wasaga Beach having only certain zones, Blue Mountain has something similar where it's only in certain zones, okay? Let me pull up this is an interactive map available to the public. Again, I can send you the link. This is the interactive map to show the zones where Airbnbs, short-term rentals, are allowed. So all the blue ones are approved Airbnbs. Again, yellow ones are ones under consideration, new applications. And these shades of pink are the zones that Airbnbs are allowed. So STAs, short-term rentals, outside the STA permitted zone area are legal non-conforming as they were approved before the bylaw was passed. So when you see things like this, all these little dots, all these little blue dots outside these pink areas, those are Airbnbs, short-term rentals that were approved before these bylaws came into play, okay? But right now, if you're not in this pink shaded area, you're not getting a license. Again, investors, keep mindful of this. A lot of people overlook this and just think you can do Airbnbs everywhere. You can't. So be mindful of that. And non-investors, people that want to move to Blue Mountain, again, this is good for you too. If there's some non-conforming uses in your neighborhood and you're not happy with it, you have a valid reason to file a complaint with Bylaw. This is just a PDF version of that same interactive map. The interactive map is nicer because you can actually see all the individual Airbnbs. Like you can click on them, see, and get the property information about those specific ones. And then right here, just something to note, the Airbnb zones in Blue Mountain, they're located in good spots. Remember, the village is right here where I'm highlighting. The village, let me see if I can use this. The village is right here. So when you got the zones, right beside it, walking distance, some of them are very close driving distance. I mean, they are located in good spots. All right, so moving on to the township of Tiny Beaches, the not so tiny, I call it. Tiny Beaches is really cool. And honestly, I'm so glad that they came up with an Airbnb system that, not everybody loves, but I think is a good idea. It was a free-for-all prior to 2023. And honestly, there's a lot of bad that comes with the free-for-all, just some really unsafe, poor condition type Airbnbs. So I am glad that they came up with the system. I'm going to explain that in a second. People love Tiny Beaches, and Airbnb in Tiny Beaches and short-term rentals is so needed because they do not have many motels, hotels. They don't have any hotels. They have a few cabins and cabin areas and little motels and rooms, but there's not many. So an Airbnb system in a short-term rental system in Tiny is great. I'm going to go through some of that. So in Tiny, they have a similar interactive map, just like Blue Mountain, except they don't have a 200 license restriction like Collingwood had. They have a 300 license restriction right now. And the way those restrictions work, by the way, is basically up to 300, they'll consider and review the application process, and then they don't accept any more. And then when it gets below 300, they'll open up some applications. Now, but you got to watch out because those licenses aren't always transferable to a new owner if you go to sell it. So you might have to go back on the list and reapply, even if it did have the short-term rental license. Be careful with that. That could be zone specific. Tiny does not allow it. I'd have to double check it on Blue Mountain. I think Blue Mountain is transferable, but Tiny is not. So we got to be real careful there. Now, the other thing Tiny has that I think is really cool is a demerit point system. So if somebody does get a short-term rental application license from the township of Tiny and they go through all the licensing and everything's good, but they're still getting, problematic renters or situations, and some neighbors are upset. You wouldn't want one complaint to shut you down. So there is a demerit point system to give people the chance to file a formal complaint, like a neighbor, let's say, but it also gives the owner a chance to try to alleviate the situation in the future, try at least to fix any problems or any noise complaints, or be more strict with their screening process when they're letting people rent out their homes and their cottages. So I kind of like the demerit point system. I think there's a place for it. Now, fines is something we got to be careful with. So there's a few different fine structures throughout the different townships. In Tiny Beaches, they can be not less than $300 and not exceed $100,000. That's wild, $100,000. I haven't heard of any going that high, but hey, those are the fines. In Wasaga Beach, I couldn't find it online, but I had read somewhere in the past that the fines would be around $2,000 a day for non-conforming Airbnbs in Wasaga. Not really seen it happen much, to be honest, but that is what one article I found in the past had said. So yeah, be careful with the fines. There are fines attached to all these places. Blue Mountain, let me check. We'll talk a bit more about Tiny. So for Tiny, the application process, similar to like Collingwood or like Blue, there's a few steps. You join a wait list. They are very close to the 300 applicants on an ongoing basis. So sometimes they're above it, sometimes they're just below it. So you might want to check that. But basically, there's an application process, site diagrams, floor plans, proof of ownership. There will be a safety review, a fire review. There's a few things to just regulate the house and make sure it's safe and compliant. Okay. Clearview Township. So this is the last one I'm going to talk about. This one's going to be super short. April 23rd, 2025, not that long ago, there's a press release to get some feedback from the town. So just to be clear, Clearview is like Stainer and the lands kind of to the south of Wasaga and Collingwood. Not everybody knows it by that name. They just think of Stainer. But Clearview Township doesn't allow Airbnbs, STRs, short-term rentals, period, clear stop, done. But read this. As of April 23, Clearview Township is taking a look at short-term rental accommodations, STRA, and we want to know what our residents think. The short-term rental accommodations community survey is now open, and we'd like to hear feedback from you, the good, the bad, and everything in between. So currently, short-term rentals are prohibited under zoning bylaw 0654. However, we recognize that the overnight accommodations in our townships are limited. They are. There's nowhere to stay. And one of Clearview's objectives on the tourism plan is to establishing a licensing program. The licensing program for short-term rentals is the way to go. It doesn't completely ban it, but it monitors it. And I agree with that. I hope you enjoyed this video. There was so much more I could have talked about, and I'm looking forward to you just calling me so we could talk about your specific wants and needs. Make sure you subscribe and tap the bell for notifications. That way you'll just be the first to know everything that is happening in the general area. Until then, keep watching my videos, and I hope you're getting some good value. Looking forward to hearing from you soon.